That was a cry from the so-called Million Man March, Justice or Else, this past Saturday at the National Mall in D.C., led by Louis Farakhan. And there, speaking at the event, was Reverend Jeremiah Wright, President Obama's pastor for many years. Listen to what Jeremiah Wright had to say. He is joining together the suffering, the condition of Native Americans, Palestinians, and blacks in America, joining the blacks of Ferguson with the Palestinians in Israel today. And Jeremiah Wright had some outlandish things to say. Take a listen.
Assalamu alaikum to the Honorable Minister Farakhan, to our hosts, to our sisters and brothers. We are grateful to God to be able to be here and to speak a word on behalf of Palestinian justice. Those who put this program together just had the Aboriginal people, the original people of this country, on this platform. And that was so powerful for this reason. They came here to remind us of the fact that this was their country before the Europeans decided that their God had given them this country. The same issue is being fought today and has been fought since 1948, and historians were carried back to the 19th century. Biblical historians were carried back to the book of Judges, where the original people, the Palestinians, and please remember, Jesus was a Palestinian.
First thing, the Palestinians today are descended from various Arab countries in the surrounding area, and do not go back to the Canaanites of the book of Judges. That's the first thing. The second thing, if you are a minister of the gospel, as Jeremiah Wright professes to be, then you recognize that the Canaanites were driven out of the land of Israel because of their wickedness. You understand that this was judgment on the Canaanites and others living in the land like Hittites and others because of their wickedness, because of their sin. God waited 400 years, according to Genesis, the 15th chapter, 400 years until he judged them, waiting for the iniquity to get to its full level. And then he gave the land as the creator. He gave it as his inheritance to the people of Israel, not to Europeans, but to the people of Israel, and said it's yours forever. And he made that promise well before he gave the law to Moses that said, if you obey, you stay in the land. If you disobey, you're exiled. And that's why it's up to him to bring them back when he wants to bring them back. The Palestinians are not ethnically related to the Canaanites of old. And if they were, all the more, according to the word, does the land not belong to them. As for Jesus being a Palestinian, you've got to be kidding me. First thing on that score, the name Palestine did not exist in that day. You had Judea, Samaria, you had provinces that were under Rome, you had the ancient land of Israel, the ancient kingdom of Israel and kingdom of Judah, with the capital of Judah in Jerusalem. And you had the Judeans living there, the Jewish people living there. There was no such thing as Palestine. That was in the 2nd century. This is after the Second Jewish Revolt under Bar Kokhba in the 2nd century, where a Roman emperor, to further mock the Jewish people and to distance them from any connection to the land whatsoever, renamed it as Palestine. The Philistines were already basically extinct. They had pretty much been wiped out or assimilated into other cultures. But because this was Israel's ancient enemy, it was given the name Palestine. This was to mock Israel and to mock the Jewish people and to further disconnect them from the land. So there was no such thing as Palestine there. Therefore, Jesus was not a Palestinian. You might as well say that the Native Americans, Jeremiah Wright referred to as the Aboriginal people here, the indigenous people, that they were citizens of the United States of America in the 1500s. So the United States of America didn't exist then. More importantly, Palestinians are overwhelmingly Muslims. There's a small percentage that are Christians. Jesus is a Jew. Jesus was known as Yeshua. That was his name. His mother's name was Miriam. He was called Rabbi Yeshua. His older cousin was called Rabbi Yochanan Hamatbil. St. John the Baptist, the immerser. We'll get that one right, huh? So hear me. Calling Jesus a Palestinian is completely anachronistic historically. Again, it's like saying that the Native Americans were citizens of the United States of America in the 1500s. And also to call Jesus a Palestinian is to take away from his Jewish roots and his Jewish identity as the rabbi, teacher, the Messiah of Israel, and hence the Savior of the world. Oh, there's more. Listen to what he says next.
The youth in Ferguson and the youth in Palestine have united together to remind us that the dots need to be connected. That what Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, has implications for us as we stand beside our Palestinian brothers and sisters who have been done one of the most egregious injustices in the 20th and 21st centuries. Boycott, divestment, and sanction is how we fought nonviolently to bring an end to apartheid in South Africa. Apartheid is going on in Palestine as we sit here. There's an apartheid wall being built twice the size of the Berlin Wall in height, keeping Palestinians off of illegally occupied territories where the Europeans have claimed that land as their own.
All right, hang on. The Jewish people living in the land of Israel descend ultimately from Israel. Yeah, there's some intermarriage in Europe and other countries and things like that, but they are not Europeans. They are Jews whose roots go back to the Middle East, whose roots go back to the Promised Land, who for years, for decades, for centuries were saying with their prayers next year in Jerusalem, longing to be back there. Jerusalem has only been the capital city of Israel. It's not been the capital city of other kingdoms, nations. There was no such thing as a Palestinian state or statehood. There was a Jewish presence through the centuries in the land, and there's plenty of room for the Jewish people and the Arabs living together there, especially when the settlements began to grow, a population surge towards the late 1800s as more and more Jews came. Plenty of room for everybody to live together. Not only so, Israel is not an apartheid state. When the UN declared Israel a nation and offered the partition plan in 1947, the partition plan was rejected by the Arab leadership. 1948, the Israelis now recognized their state for the first time. The world recognized it. What happened? Immediately, the surrounding Arab nations, 800,000 Jews had to flee from the surrounding Arab Muslim nations and were mainly assimilated back into Israel. About 600,000 or 700,000 Palestinians fled because of the war and also with the encouragement of the surrounding Muslim Arab nations. They were not assimilated. What happened to the 200,000 Arabs who stayed in the land of Israel? They are now 1.5 million strong. They make up 10% of the parliament. They even have a representative on the Supreme Court who is an Arab. It is not an apartheid state. What about the wall? It's 97% fence, and it's put up to keep murderers out. And the reason for the wall in certain places is to keep snipers out. Those are the realities. But what do those realities have to do with what Dr. Wright's saying? Nothing whatsoever. And how are you going to compare the youths in Ferguson? Which Europeans came and took black land in America? I mean, how do you compare that? Yeah, there's the horrible history of America's treatment of African Americans. We understand that. We renounce that and work in every way we can to continue to make things right and push things forward as a society together. But what's the connection? There is none. It's just inciting hatred, violence, and anger and trying to connect dots that do not exist. One more clip.
Dr. Martin Luther King said in 1967 at the Riverside Church, "We are fighting a three-headed demon, and manifestations of that demon have been seen today and are seen not only on this stage but on the world stage with the Native Americans from this country, the Native Americans in Central America, the Native Americans called Mexican in Guatemala, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, the natives who see foreigners coming in and taking their land." He said we're fighting a three-headed, Dr. King did, a three-headed demon: racism, militarism, and capitalism. Those three-headed demons are what are causing the Palestinians to have a fight just like the fight we're having here, trying to get people to understand that Black lives matters. Palestinians are saying Palestinian lives matters.
All lives matter, for sure. And we should be jealous for justice for the Palestinians and justice for American blacks and justice for Native Americans and every group, and justice for Israelis and Jews, every group. But listen to Dr. King. The whole world must see that Israel must exist and has the right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world. Peace for Israel, he said, means security, and we must stand with all our might to protect its rights to exist, its territorial integrity. I see Israel as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world and a marvelous example of what can be done, how desert land can be transformed into an oasis of brotherhood and democracy. Peace for Israel means security, and that security must be a reality.